I'll call this regular council meeting of the Village of Grand Manan to order at 7:30 p.m. on September 12th. And with us for prayer is Pastor David Phillips.
The audio of Pastor David Phillips will resume in 10 seconds. Thank you for your patience.
As the council meets together, I just pray your blessings upon them and their mayor and all the staff here. I just thank you for the work that they do to keep our island moving forward and tackling issues and doing the different things that come upon their plates every day. Watch over them and encourage them and help them to know your love each day, and be with all the folks on this great island. Help them to know your blessings and to be a blessing, and help us, Lord, even to think of things going on around our world and to be thinking about those, praying about situations, and especially as we have lost our Queen, we just pray for the countries of our Commonwealth that we are a part of, and thank you for her many, many years of reign, and look forward to the opportunity for King Charles now in the months and years ahead, Lord. We just pray for all of the royal family and our sister countries around the world that are part of the Commonwealth, as the Queen's funeral will be in just a few more days, a week from now. We just ask your hand to be upon them all. Help all that grieve, and help them to be able to celebrate also her wonderful life and legacy. So just keep us mindful of all, even the least of these, that we all can make a difference in the life that we live, and we're thankful that we live where we do. So be with this evening's meeting, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. I think Pastor Phillips said it better than I probably will or could have. I think it's important that we acknowledge the death of the Queen last week, and I'd like to take a moment of silence at the beginning of the meeting just to acknowledge that. Thank you. I do just want to mention as well in my opening remarks that there is a book of condolence here at the village office out in the hall, so if you're so inclined, I'd encourage you to come in. It will be here for the period of mourning, which I believe ends with the funeral next Monday, if I have the dates correct. So if you're out and about and have a couple minutes, I just encourage you to come in and feel free to sign it. We've been told that our books of condolence are going to go into Fredericton, and they'll be held there for perpetuity in the archives. So the only other things that I had in the opening remarks is just a couple of quick reminders. One, welcome back, I guess, to the kids to school. Some of them may feel more welcome about that than others, depending on their age range. But just a note for everybody, particularly mornings and school dismissal times, that there are children on the roads, and just to be mindful of that when you're out and about. And the other thing is just a reminder that we have emergency responders who are responding to accidents, fires, that sort of thing in their personal vehicles. So if you see four-way flashers, just pull over to the side and give them the right of way, because they're on their way somewhere, and so just to acknowledge that they are doing a service for us, and we thank them for doing that. Item number 4 is disclosure of conflict of interest.
17.1.
Councillor Green is declaring on 17.1. Anyone else? Okay. Hearing none, I'm looking for adoption of the minutes. There are 2 sets, one of the regular council meeting of August 8th, and we had a special meeting of August 30th.
I'd make a motion that we adopt the minutes from our regular council meeting on the 8th, August the 8th, and our special meeting of August 30th.
You heard the motion from Deputy Mayor Fitzsimmons. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Greenlaw. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. Item number 6 is additions to the agenda. I have one invoice addition to be added under the general operating fund. It's for island waste and recycling for $3,423.48, and that is for backhoe repairs. You heard the motion by Councillor Russell. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Toll. Question? All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. Item number 7 is the RCMP report.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. My apologies for not being in uniform tonight. I hear that that's bothered some of you, so I'll try not to make that mistake again, but
The question is, are you here in a marked car or not?
they'll just have to wait and find out.
Okay, thank you.
Just looking at our file count for August of this year, we had 77 files that we dealt with. August of last year, we had 79 files, so very comparable this month as opposed to last month where there was quite a bit of discrepancy there. And just breaking that down a little bit, we had 2 assault investigations, 6 calls for kind of combine this unlawfully in a dwelling house, break and enter, and trespass files. We had 5 reports mischief, 1 breach of condition charge, 2 suspended driver charges, 21 other traffic related tickets or traffic reports, things of that nature, 3 collisions, 3 fraud investigations, 4 calls for a mental health act, and 4 well-being checks that we did. I just wanted to thank Madam Mayor for mentioning about school being back in. I was going to speak about that very quickly as a reminder that yes, school is back in this past week. And just to be respectful of the school zone and also the school buses as they're driving around as well. The school zone, the radar signs aren't on or working properly, so don't wait to see that flash at you before you start slowing down. There's a warning sign for 30 coming up, and then there's the 30 sign as well. And the hours for that is 7:30 to 4 p.m. So just for the public to be very mindful of that. I was out there a few days last week, gave some warnings out, and hopefully that was served as a good reminder. And going forward, if things continue that way, then we might have to escalate how we respond to that. But for now, we're just trying to remind people of what they need to be doing there. And as for the school buses, just kind of slow down if you're driving around them, and watch when they put their lights on that you're stopping for them, not going through. The other thing I wanted to mention tonight, and it's not something I necessarily wanted to bring up, but it's happened a few times recently, so I did want to mention it, is the public attending RCMP officers' houses to report issues or make complaints. Happens everywhere, not just Grand Manan, and it's probably happened as long as there are police officers. But I would like to minimize this if at all possible. Just because a police car is in the driveway doesn't mean that the officer is on duty. They might be on days off, but on call. There might be a day shift person working and they're the night shift, so we don't want to be disturbing the wrong person or causing a delay when you go to report something to that person, it's not the right person, and then they either have to call somebody or you have to call in yourself. So rather than making that unnecessary delay, if it's important enough to go to that person's house and report it, then it's probably important enough to call 911. You're not going to get yelled at for calling 911 if you needed police assistance. So just wanted to make that mention. The other thing that's important, if to report it the proper way, is that report is then recorded if it's made on the phone or through 911, so that it's accurately detailed what is being reported, and if something happens while you're trying to report it, then it's all being documented. And also, if it's something that requires more resources than just the police, a fire truck or an ambulance, If you call 911, then the appropriate things are going to get dispatched right away rather than having a delay in that system. That's all the remarks that I had tonight, so unless anybody has any questions tonight.
Questions?
Just, does the phone outside the station there, is that go to St. George?
That goes directly to our dispatchers.
Right.
So yes, if you're needing to make a complaint, 911 if it's an emergency. If it's not emergency, if you need to speak to an officer, go down to the police detachment. If there's nobody there, the phone outside, there's a gray box. I'm hoping to either have it painted or replaced to a more brighter color so that draws your attention. But there is a sign there that says the phone is right there. So you can just pick up the phone and it goes directly to the dispatchers, doesn't go through another detachment or anything like that. It goes directly to our dispatchers. So just wait on the line there, and then once you can talk to them, let them know what you're there for, and they'll call the appropriate person to come in and help you out. The other phone number for non-emergency complaints that goes through our dispatchers is 1-888-506-RCMP, and I believe that's 7267, I believe. But yeah, it's 888-506-RCMP, and so that is for any non-emergency complaints go through that phone number.
Anyone else? Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
Thanks. Item number, we have no business arising for the minutes, so number 9 is 9-1 Victoria Park Swimming Pool Splash Pad, CAO Rayner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think pretty much guaranteed everyone sitting around this table a little over a year ago at some point during their campaign for the election for office was touched on our old swimming pool. So one of the first things that we did once everyone got elected was started to talk about the swimming pool. We reached out and found some great designers with Trace Plan and started talking about the pool. Had a great design done with a splash pad. It looked great, and somewhere along the way we thought, well, maybe that great pool would look better over here at the community center. So we kind of delayed things again and brought them back in and done, a big master plan for here at the community center, which we all know from Jim's presentation at last month's meeting was fantastic. But I find that we're going around in circles here, and we're in jeopardy of potentially losing another swimming season. So at the special meeting on the 30th, we talked about trying to narrow this down and really take a grasp at a concept and a location, and I think that's what we've done. So I think we're looking at Victoria Park from after the special meeting on the 30th. After that meeting, I reached out to Jim almost instantly to say, we need to make this a priority. We need to make sure this, if it's going to happen, we need to make sure this happens and not lose another season. We all had that great presentation from Emma. She has that community splash pad group that they're working with, and they're biting at the bit to try to do some fundraising to get this thing going. But they've kind of been on hold just to try to find out what we're doing, which direction we're going. So after the meeting on the 30th, I reached out to Emma. We had a Zoom call. We talked about the splash pad. Basically what we come down to is I told Jim at Trace we would like to take the swimming pool that they had designed, but we want to incorporate the splash pad that Emma and her group designed and put the two together. There were some concerns with the splash pad group about the accessibility of the splash pad, accessibility with regards to hours, not so much accessibility-wise. So they were worried about the fencing because the initial report had everything all fenced in, and theirs had it just kind of out in the middle of the field by the new outdoor courts, which caused a little bit of concern, as all of you know, with some of the vandalism issues we've had this year up to Victoria Park. So anyway, I think we've come up with a good compromise. After talking with Emma, she's on board with the ideas. So I think at this point, with the will of council, I would like to officially bring in Trace to come up with that design. Currently, right now, when I was talking to Jim, they're looking at about $7,000 to bring in a surveyor. So I basically asked him, what's the $7,000 going to get us that we didn't get in the report when you were here last time? So his response was, the survey provides a detailed location and elevation plan. The plan forms the basis of the construction plan and tender documents. Tells us the shape and the location of all the existing materials, and from these we form excavation, engineered, mechanical, and landscape documents. Very essential. We put it out to a couple different surveyors. We reached out to Hughes out of St. John, never had a response, so he has one out of Moncton. I believe it's WSP. So I told him after this council meeting tonight, I would text him and let him know the outcome, but as of right now, that's what's holding him up to continuing.
Questions or comments? Councillor Russell?
I make the motion that we get Trace to engage the surveyor and let's get at it so we can go swimming next summer.
You heard the motion from Councillor Russell. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Boyd. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. Item 9.2 is the rural plan update. CAO Rayner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So in everyone's package, we have the updated rural plan from Dylan. This was the result from the public engagement that they had when they were here. So basically, tonight, what we need to follow the proper timeline to get this thing implemented before the end of the year, we need to set the date for the next public hearing. So in order to give us the proper timeline, we need that public hearing date to be set for October 3rd. From that, we need 21 days, so we'll advertise on the website tomorrow on the 13th. That'll give us 21 days till October the 13th. We also have to refer this file to PAC. We already have it on PAC's agenda for this coming Wednesday. They'll review that and advise council. After that, if all goes well, we will do the first and second reading on the October 3rd meeting. And if there's no problems, we could possibly potentially be looking at the third and final reading at the November 7th meeting.
Questions?
So we're having that public hearing at 6 p.m., then our council meeting at 7:30. We're anticipating that public meeting not being elongated, I guess.
I assume she's going off of the attendance that we had for the first open house. But we can adjust that date or time to potentially start earlier, supper time, 4 o'clock, something like that, and finishing up around the 6 or 6:30 in preparation for the regular council meeting.
Councillor Boyd?
Can I make a suggestion that maybe if it works for everybody's schedule, staff and whatever, that maybe we do if that's the date we want to go with, maybe do a noon hour session where people come in on their lunch breaks or whatever, and then do an evening session maybe at 5. That would give a little bit more space between sessions and council.
Anyone else? Are very quiet tonight. So I think if I understand, and Chris, you can correct me, is we need a motion to set the date and time of the meeting and a motion to refer to PAC. Is that correct?
That is correct. The advertisement that will go out is actually the top cover of the draft that you all have in your package, which indicates the date and time of the meeting.
So
I realize this is a time-sensitive issue, but is it good to have that meeting on the same day of our council meeting? Like, does that really give people enough time for input or anything? Or the input was last public meetings?
I think based on the lack of attendance in that public meeting, I think she didn't think that there would be a whole lot that they would have to cover. So, I mean, she did say that one of the possibilities could be to have that public open house on the 3rd. You could defer that first and second reading till November, and then do the 3rd reading at the December council meeting and still have it ready before the end of the year.
Councillor Green?
I worry that if we stack them so close, people will have the perception that the public meeting is just lip service, an exercise, that we're not going to take time to consider objections, suggestions, that we're just steamrolling, if you will. I wouldn't mind if we postponed our August 3rd meeting to the October 3rd meeting and had it on the 4th or 5th or something to, to give that space for us to have some considered opinion on whatever we might hear at the open house.
So you're suggesting moving our regular council meeting, or move the open house and then?
I would suggest we move the regular council meeting, because if everybody's fine with it and we want to move ahead, then we're only moving it back a day or two. We're not, putting the cart before the horse.
Anyone else for suggestions time-wise? Councillor Boyd?
I guess this isn't a suggestion time-wise, but I know there've been a few councillors, and I've talked to the CAO and the mayor about a possible, what we heard session. I know that wasn't a lot of great attendance, but I'm sure, as with most everybody around the table, people have had some concerns. I've had some brought forward to me personally, and I was kind of hoping that we might get a chance to dig into this a little bit more. I have some concerns myself with the new rural plan, but I'm all for having another day of public consultation and then maybe even a session after that with just council and Dylan again about what we heard sort of session.
And you would suggest doing that before first and second reading, or after?
I would say a public consultation and then one of these before first and second reading.
So that, in just thinking ahead, would probably mean first and second reading in November. Yep. At which point, if that's the will of the group, then we don't have to move our regular meeting. We can have the open house later that week, do what we heard or whatever, and then still give us time to meet the December 31st deadline that we have to get this in place. Is that, yes?
Yeah, we can just have no fewer than 21 days notice after we advertise. So if it's later than that, if we're not going to do the first and second reading at the October meeting, then we can have Jennifer's more than willing to come, have that discussion, do that later in the week, and have everything all lined up to do the first and second reading at the November meeting.
So we need 21 days from the announcement to the first and second reading, or 21 days from the announcement to the public hearing?
Public hearing.
Okay.
So we will advertise this on the website and Facebook page tomorrow. So no fewer than 21 days from tomorrow can we hold that public meeting. So anytime after 21, but no fewer than 21.
Can this be advertised on the Voyant system?
Absolutely.
Well, then I would make a motion that we advertise tomorrow and then firm up a date for our public hearing, followed by a what we have heard, or kind of an open session with council and Dylan Consulting again within the timeline to bring us to first and second reading for our November meeting.
You heard the motion from Councillor Boyd. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Toll. Question?
Don't we have to have the date set, though, before we announce tomorrow? So we would have to set that date tonight.
Correct.
Councillor Boyd, would you like to amend your motion and pick a date to insert there?
I would pick a date of Tuesday, October 4th.
Are you okay with that amendment, Councillor Toll? So do we understand the motion with the amendment? Any question? All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. So that sets the date for the public hearing, and we also need a motion to refer this to PAC, if someone would like to do that. I see Councillor Russell raising his hand to make a motion.
To refer the proposed rural plan to PAC within these timelines.
Heard the motion by Councillor Russell. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Greenlaw. Question? All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. Okay, so that takes us to item number 10, which is our 10-minute open session. No? Well, you can talk in the 10-minute open session too if you want, but you're item 11 on the agenda, so.
I didn't have an
So seeing no one else is tackling Jim to get to the podium for the 10-minute open session, I'm going to suggest we move on to item number 11, which is delegations or special speakers, and that's Jim Leslie to talk about ditching and brush cutting.
Madam Mayor, and thank you, councilors, for allowing us to represent ourselves here as people concerned with trees. As you probably know, I hope you all received a letter. Okay, so I just want to read this into the record to make sure that everyone's on the same page, and so I'll just read it. Many people, both islanders and property and summer visitors, are concerned about the proposed tree and brush cutting along the secondary roads that is to begin this month. At a time when so many municipalities are implementing restrictions on unnecessary tree cutting, many of us are wondering why such extensive cutting is set to take place on the island. The value of the trees in helping to mitigate the effects of climate change is widely recognized. Grand Manan is a tourist destination for bird watchers and nature lovers, could set an example by leaving the trees which do not pose a road safety concern. Having spoken to a number of concerned people, we believe some key points need clarification. Why is such a drastic cut considered necessary? And I've certainly had people come to me, and I'm sure a lot of you have. Are we widening the roads? Are we putting in a bicycle path, etc.? And so if it's not for that, why? And apparently we aren't building a bicycle path, which I would support 100% just on the side. Can council explain clearly what the road safety issues are? It's not obvious to a lot of us what the safety issues are on the road exactly. Now we understand clearing a sight line at driveways and intersections, understand ditches growing heavier woods that impair snow plowing. We all know what happened in Chernobyl when they didn't cut any trees for a while, and we certainly don't want that. However, there's a big difference between that and clearing a great swath of roadway. If anyone's been down towards Southern Head, they notice how that's going to look. Is there anyone here who hasn't been down to Southern Head? No. Okay, so, why cut the non-ditched? Why cut on the opposite side of the power lines? However, I spoke to Madam Mayor just by chance, and apparently the power lines are not a concern here. There won't be any cutting for power lines. Also, I've come to find out that not all the roads have a 66-foot clearance or conveyance, and in fact, are right of way. And something that else is, just on the side again, different jurisdictions seem to have different laws regarding rights of way. In some cases, the original landowner's lines still meet, but the conveyance is given for the public right-of-way, even though the land is owned by someone else. In such cases, sometimes trees are still owned by the owners previous to the road. There are so many confusing laws, and everything's up in the air about this, that, just saying, if anyone knows anything about that. Does every chip seal have lane? No, and I spoke to Chris about this, and apparently we're only interested in about 4 roads, mostly. So, yeah.
Where the concern came was once they get up into all those narrow streets up in North End, like
Yeah.
Fern, Poodle, Buckburn, those type. And as you and I spoke, Jim, a lot of this could have been avoided if the surveyors that were hired by the village had done the job correctly.
Yeah, that's for sure. When people woke up and saw those lines, those red flags on their houses almost, so it's a little concerning. Also, how do you define ornamental trees? I know that there says the contractors will be instructed to cut to the line. It says that, but then it goes on to say, well, it's negotiable, sort of. You know, you get a hold of somebody and they'll come along and visit your house and you'll have a yak about what can be cut and what can't be cut. So we need some kind of definition on an ornamental tree. And that being the case, does it only concern houses where there's dwellings and where there's someone to talk to? What about big chunks of property where no one is available to talk to, probably don't even know this is going on? Who's looking out for those maples and et cetera? Especially we're talking about hardwood trees, of course. But there are some big, beautiful red spruce as well and other trees. So that's another question. Who determines which trees are going to be cut? And does someone have to be home to make sure their maple tree isn't cut down? One of the other things is that the machinery they use for cutting, they don't actually cut the tree down. Right? There's no chainsaws involved here. There's no trimming. And once again, if you've been down to Southern Head and see what they do, they take a giant mulcher and just bring it down and chop everything up and thank you, ma'am, and there they go. It's a mess. I'm sure everyone here agrees that's a mess. Nobody can't agree with that. Also, are there permits needed to be acquired for cutting in wet zones, in low-lying land, and drainage? And I'm sure all of you probably know better than me what's involved with environment, etc. So those are the questions we pose, and we'd kind of like some answers. Of course, the answer we're looking for is that you're going to go along and you're going to cut what needs to be cut. If somebody can't see driving out of a driveway and their view is obstructed, obviously that's got to go. There's no question about that. If alders and whatnot are creeping up on the roadside, of course those ditches got to go. But it doesn't mean everything has to go. It doesn't mean because you have 66-foot right away down a road that there'll be a great swath of land plundered and trees beaten to death. We can do without that. It's extra expense, it's an eyesore, and it's just plain dumb. So, any questions?
Thank you. Mr. Leslie?
For some answers to your questions?
Yes, we are. We've read this into the record now, and we would like to have a little active.
We've prepared some questions here that we've all received, and I've prepared some answers for your questions. It's not really a debate, but I'll definitely answer your questions, and hopefully we can come. I mean, this isn't rocket science. But
Okay, Councillor Layton.
the answer to your first question is why such a drastic necessary? The intent is to remove vegetation from the right-of-way. By mulching the vegetation on the right-of-way, it allows evaluation of the existing drainage, ditches and culverts. At this point, drainage improvement work can be planned prior to future roadway surfacing.
Okay, are they gonna haul away that mulch?
We'll talk about this down here in your next question, or this is,
Well, you're clearing ditches, you're saying you wanna clear drainage and ditches, and you're gonna,
why is a drastic cut necessarily? And I just
Okay.
answered that.
go ahead.
Can council explain clearly what the road safety issues are?
Hmm.
Vegetation management is performed throughout the province. The purpose of this activity is to clear any vegetation within the right-of-way of the highway to allow greater visibility for motorists, animals, pedestrians. It allows better bearing of the road during winter operations, allowing more sunlight on the road to warm the road surface and help avoid damage to vehicles caused by vegetation, fallen branches, trees from storms, limbs hanging in the driveways or in the driving path of the road. So that's what the road safeties are. Things hanging over the road, ice on the road.
Who's the author of that?
Pardon me?
Who's the
Well,
author
this is,
of
we're
that?
going by the DTIs. We're working with them. This is our contract, but we're administrating for them. And there are our go-to people when we need questions, and these are my go-to people when I was preparing this.
Well, if you had a go-to person that was a counselor in Fredericton, what do you suppose they would say?
Well, this isn't Fredericton.
Oh, well,
this is
no, it's a
Brandon
much
Ann.
Okay,
Let's
keep on
just
the
a
subject.
second. We're going to address any comments through the chair. We're not going to have back and forth,
Okay.
just so we can
Yep.
keep some order, if that's okay.
Yes, yes.
And I think,
yes.
just to clarify, because the funding for this is partially from DTI, they are the ones that maintain the road standards, that, in my mind, it would make sense that that's who we get some advice from on what the standards are for clearing the roads, because I'm not sure anyone around the table necessarily has that expertise to do that. So we rely on them to provide us some guidance on these things. So with that, I think, since you provided us with the questions, I think Councillor Layton has some responses to some of them. Maybe the best thing would be to let him go through the responses, and then if you have some feedback based on those, then we can go from there. And I think that would maybe make things a little bit smoother as far as order.
All right,
Ready?
ready.
Okay, number 3 is ditching, line of sight clearance at driveways and intersections. We understand, but most places don't have a line of sight problem that we've noticed. We are wondering why this is necessary to cut the non-ditch, non-power side of the road back as far as flagged, cut back the 33-foot allowance on either side of the road. And your next question is cut mature trees that are clearly not interfering with line of sight. So here, the intent is to remove vegetation from the right-of-way. By mulching the vegetation on the right-of-way, it allows evaluation of the existing drainage, ditches, and culverts. That's what's important here. At this point, drainage improvement work can be planned prior to future roadways resurfacing. Okay, so that's pretty self-explanatory, I think.
Councillor Layton, why
that-
don't you just keep going through, and then we can go back at the
Okay,
end,
number 4, does every chip seal lane on the street, every chip seal lane and street on Grand Manan have a 66-foot right-of-way? No, it does not. Number 5, is the red line definitely being cut by the contractor as indicated in the flyer, because we are having conflicting information depending on who you ask, and that's where our contractor and the problem come in with our surveyors, that they didn't really do the job that they were hired to do. So it created a lot of conflicting and confusion, which is why you're probably here tonight, right? But the question to that is, where did I write that down? The line was basically cut for the contractors to come in and look at the job site, understand the scope of it, identify their issues, see what trees are coming down, and give you a price on that, and that's what they did. Okay? How do we find ornamental? Ornamental trees can be identified by signs of being maintained, such as being mowed around and being upkept. Even if ornamental, it may be necessary for the tree to be limbed by a pole saw, as branches may be detrimental to the purpose of brush cutting. Example, branches too close to the roadway. Fallen fruit trees attract wild animals to the shoulder of the road, or remove completely. Does that make sense? I think it does. So number 7, who's going to represent the absent landowners and save their trees that are not presented any danger or obstruction to the ditch line of sight? Many of these landowners may be unaware of the proposed cutting. Only trees on the right-of-way will be removed, not trees on private property. If that's your tree, that's your tree. If it's the province's tree, I guess it's our tree. But our whole purpose in this is to put that flyer out and make sure everybody is engaged with us and understands that we're not going to cut down your favorite tree unless it's a safety issue. And this is where we've gotten into this conflict with the village, people of the village, that they don't understand the scope of the work here. But nobody's interested in cutting down a beautiful oak tree that's been there 150 years on your lawn. No, it's not going to happen. And the answer to the question is, who's going to represent the absent landowners? And that's going to be a representative of the village that works for our consultant, our engineering consultants. They're going to go around. They're going to be 3 streets ahead of the people that are doing the clearing. They'll walk that street. They'll talk to the property owners, see what the issues are, and hopefully come to an understanding. But at the end of the day, it's about if there's trees overhanging over the road, they're going to get, the limbs are going to get cut. We won't cut your tree down, but we'll cut the limbs off. And that's just common sense, I believe. Who gets the wood that is cut? Where is that? The preferred method of removing vegetation and the contract specified is equipment fitted with a mulching head. This operation does create wood chips and does not leave logs on the right-of-way. This is an efficient and cost-effective method to deal with the vegetation. The vegetation management specifications state all cutting and fallen growth shall be shredded or chipped and eventually and evenly distributed over the ground within the clearing limits. TTI spec states large pieces of wood unable to be shredded are to be removed from the site by the contractor. It's his problem what he does with it. It's his job, and he'll dispose of anything like that. Has the village applied for, or will the tender contractor be applying for a WAWA permit? Basically, the work does not require a water course and wetland alteration permit, WAWA. As the contract states, the contractor shall not use heavy equipment for vegetation management within 30 meters of a stream, bank, and shall do cutting therein by hand or by equipment able to reach in and cut and remove the trees in the bush. The contractor shall avoid falling or skidding trees across any water course, any brook, anything like that. And the contractor shall minimize ground disturbance to minimize the potential for erosion and sedimentation into water courses and runoff into the streams, right? And I think that's the end of your questions.
No, it's not.
Well, your 10 questions, we could sit here all night and beat back and forth, but we're not going to get anywhere. But I appreciate you bringing, and honestly, this is,
Jordy,
we're not going to
gonna
please
do
everybody.
when-
We're not going to please
Sorry,
everybody.
Councillor Layton, what are you going to do when you get down to the end of the Park Road down the Anchorage?
The end of the park.
Yeah, you own
road.
all the trees there, so,
Pardon me?
got them all? Well, the province owns
Is the
all
right
the
of
trees.
way? If the right of way, I guess that's probably what's going
Don't
to
need
happen.
a right of way,
yes.
you own them all. Any rate, that's,
I say,
Sorry.
Mr. Leslie, do you have anything else or
Yeah.
any other comments? Just,
okay, so this is the thing. If it's fine to go in front of somebody's manicured lawn, and if it's fine to ditch that with respect, and if it's fine to make sure that that's safe, when in fact where all the children are playing and people are walking and most of the traffic is, and you're able to deal with that in a respectful manner, why can't you in a more desolate place where someone isn't living, and when your people go there to talk to the property owners to see which trees, they live in New York or Montreal or Nova Scotia. They're not there and they don't know. And what you're telling me is that when you get to the open parts of the road, She's going 33 feet each way, boys, no matter what's there. That's what you're saying. You're saying your management program is gonna cut 33 feet, period. I think,
Any landowner on that on that side of the road can cut their land from the back line to the side of the road. It's
Okay.
his land.
I think at this point, if you had, I think I hear what you're saying. If you have some closing remarks, leave them with us. We have to review the tender because nothing has been accepted. If there's anyone else who has questions for Mr. Leslie, I'd suggest this is probably the time to do it if there's any further comments. I mean, I'm sure you know, we've had a number of people who've expressed concerns about how we're gonna go forward with this. I do think it's important to remember that had we not been looking for people's input and had we not wanted to respect people and the trees and other vegetation on their property, we could have just started the contract without marking it and asking for people's feedback. We were doing this in an effort to try to make sure that we were recognizing what people wanted to have happen on their property. I think that that's
and
still
you did a fine job.
I think that that's still the intent of this council, is we don't want to cut trees that don't need to be cut, but I think we also have to recognize that we have a responsibility for safety. And so it will be our responsibility ultimately to decide how we do balance that. So if you have any closing comments, I'd suggest you make them now.
Well,
And then
one-
if there's
one
any
thing-
questions, we'll go from there.
One thing I noticed was that the contractors came and the ribbons were set out for them so they could ascertain a price for all this cutting. Too bad everything was set at 66 feet. The price must have gone up considerably. And I would suggest it could be done for a lot less money if you cut only what needed to be cut for safety and for clearing the ditches enough to perhaps ditch them in the future, whatever your plan is, put in a bicycle path. But I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for your time, Madam Mayor, councilors. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Yeah.
Jim, not to drag this on any further, but
Go ahead.
we basically have approximately 50 kilometers of MDH road, which is municipal designated highways, which is a 50-50 cost share between the municipality and the province. The roads in question that are less than the 66 feet makes up for less than a half a kilometer. So as far as pricing goes, there would be negligible impact pricing-wise because we're still looking at about 49 plus kilometers to be done
But
for the
that's assuming you
66 foot.
cut 66-foot swath down the road, which is totally unnecessary. Perhaps the price would be, reflect a much more considered cutting for what needs to be done for safety and what doesn't need to be done. Why cut down 200-year-old trees that aren't one way in the bit? Why they're not in the line of sight? They're not gonna fall on the road. And without even, you know. Anyway, I think you all get the picture, I hope. Is there anybody that wants to ask me a question? I would gladly entertain it.
I think we understand where you're coming from. I think we understand everybody's concerns because obviously your property is a very personal thing for everybody. And so we're going to try to do our best to balance that as best we can, and we appreciate you coming tonight. So,
Thank you. Madam Mayor, it's a little more than that. It's consideration for the entire island. As I drive down the Whistle Road or out through
Okay.
Dock Road.
we're moving on, but understood.
Sorry.
Item number 14.1 is civic numbers and secluded locations. Councillor Green.
Hi. This has come up a couple times that I'm aware of, but more and more people are living off-grid, off their normal roads. Civic numbers or civic address is needed for quite a few things, such as a gun license, a PAL, driver's license, and passport, whatever. You can't just give a post office box for those. The responsibilities to the village is that we assign civic numbers to property owners. The owner requests a number, And then it's their responsibility if it's a multi-dwelling, such as, we'll use the Rotary Real Estate, that's 20 Stanley Road or 22 Stanley Road, I forget which, and they assign apartments 1 through 20. We've had requests from people that live in Dark Harbor, specifically right now, that are asking for a civic number. I think it'd be nice if we had a policy that when someone asks that, we could give them a clear answer that the property owner, in the case of Dark Harbor, that would be Crab Lumber or whatever, that they should contact them and have them request a civic number, which we would say is 700 on Dark Harbor Road, and then it would be up to Crab Lumber or whoever the other property owners might be that would request this to assign lot numbers to their leased properties so that people can get their civic number and apply for their forms and get new passports or whatever they need at the time. So I would like, does anyone have questions before I make a motion?
Questions? Councillor Turner.
How would that impact, like, the responsibility for civic number? Like, if you say, I need an ambulance at 700 Dark Harbor, like, is that going to be part of, sort of the mapping for that kind of thing, too?
Well,
Do you know what I mean?
Well, right now, when they get a call for Dark Harbor, it's just the end of the Dark Harbor Road. So saying it's 700 Dark Harbor or the end of Dark Harbor Road, if you can say it's 700 Dark Harbor Road, lot 56 or whatever, that certainly gives them a lot more to go on than the end of the Dark Harbor Road.
Yeah, but my question is, will that be mapped out? Like, will they know where 700 is, like the emergency?
Well, they will get a number from the village, 700, and the owner posts that at the perimeter of their property.
Okay.
And as far as the lot numbers and stuff, they would have to individually get those for however they decide to number or letter or call their lots. But that's up to the property owner to distinguish that, or that's my understanding. I've talked to a couple people. I've talked to Manzer, I've talked to Chris, and around. These people have a legitimate concern. They need that civic number just to live today, and just telling them we can't help them seems like the wrong answer, when I think if we follow that of giving the owner the civic number and letting them divvy it up, if you will, it seems like an easy solution.
Any other comments?
I think when this came up before, I think one of the big issues was, like most stuff we're finding, is the wording in our civic numbering bylaw. It referred to the owner. But I think to Councillor Turner's question, a subdivision plan of that property would make it easier to identify locations. Like if I lived at Dark Harbor and, the first camp you come to was lot 1, then lot 2 all the way over down the outlet. But I'm not sure if that's doable without some type of a certified surveyor coming in to do the plan, or if the property owner can kind of piece that up himself, or.
Well, that would be if the camp owner would approach the owner and say, look, I need a civic number. And then the owner would contact us and say, okay, I want a civic number for my property at Dark Harbor, in this case. And we would determine every kilometer is 100 numbers, so if the road's 7 kilometers long, then it would be 700. And then to determine his lot numbers, that would be up to him to do that. And if they went, normally the left-hand side is odd, the right-hand side is even. If they went left around the pod odd and right even, at least it would give you a starting point, because today, if you don't know where Billy Joe Bob's camp is, you haven't got a clue where to start.
I might put Councillor Layton, the unofficial mayor of Dark Harbor, on the spot here, but
Well, no, but I
was
guess.
there an issue with did you have an issue of not being accessible all the time because the high water prevented
that
the
is an issue.
first responders from getting
that is an issue, but I guess my understanding of the whole thing was, like you said, the wording of the bylaw. It said owner of the property, not leasee, but like, wouldn't it be just as easy to change that wording to a leasee or leaseor instead of the property owner itself? And then you can come down and register and apply and get your blue sign just like everybody does, and that goes in a record somewhere, the province of New Brunswick, and they respond to that address, I guess, but.
Councillor Turner?
That's kind of my question. Does that go in somewhere? That's what I'm asking. Like, if it's not on a road and such, and does that give a responsibility, like, that I have to go to this number? Like, if a ambulance has to go there, is that gonna show somewhere if it's not on an actual road?
Councillor Green? Well, you're the one that started this, so.
Oh, yeah, I did, I know. I'm not sure what Ambulance New Brunswick uses for a mapping system or who updates it. I know that from my previous job, every road had a range of numbers. It started at 1 and ended at 3 or 4 or 500, wherever it was for the length of it. And you were somewhere in between. Everyone, all the first responders I know are very familiar with the numbering system being, say, every 100 numbers is a kilometer. You turn the corner, you check your odometer, you're going to 450, you're going 4.5 kilometers, you go. If you're looking for an odd number, you're looking on the left, even, you're looking on the right, and you find it. I don't know if they actually have it in a GPS system in their ambulance that would show them like a beacon. I really don't know that. I think it would be good if they did, but I don't know.
Yep. Councillor Russell?
There must be other communities around the province that are faced this, have similar situation and maybe have solved it. So maybe Chris could reach out through his, or Dan through your group and see, you know, if someone already has a solution. But I agree, we've got to identify these places for emergency response.
This is what I was wondering, if it was a province mandated thing, this is the way you do it, or if it's just as simple as our bylaw.
Well, as far as the wording goes, that's just our old bylaw. That just needs to have it to be updated, so. But getting back to the Ambulance New Brunswick question, I believe I was told that they use Google Maps, which isn't always right, unfortunately.
So where do we want to go with this? Do we want to table for more information, or do you want to make your motion? Okay.
I hate tabling. I'll make this open-ended enough that we can do what needs to happen, I think. I move that we have staff develop a clear process for handling requests for civic numbers from leasees.
You heard the motion from Councillor Green. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Russell. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. I'm going to try to do this somewhat quickly, but have it make some sense, and I really don't have a lot of hope that either one of those things happen, so bear with me with this. There were a couple of things in the package that I'm going to refer to. One of them is a presentation that I had on my laptop and now can't find from a meeting talking about, thank you. My microphone wasn't on, sorry. It will take you through some of the things we were looking at. It was during the process when we were talking about how we were going to deal with the 6 mandates that the Regional Service Commission is now responsible for with the local government reform. I think we've talked about this a couple times over the last 9 months. There's been not a lot of guidance from the province about how we move forward with any of these 6 pillars. It's really been left to the RSCs to develop their own plan about how they do go forward. Some of them were a little bit easier to sort of identify how we were going to move forward with. Transportation is one of them, and the suggestion is to partner with Dial-A-Ride Charlotte County to be able to address some of the regional transportation issues. The community development piece, you'll see there's something in there from Vibrant Communities Charlotte County. They're going to become essentially an entity of the RSC with some tweaking to address areas of the region that they're not necessarily working in right now. Economic development was probably one of the more challenging pieces. I think we had 3, if not 4 meetings on this part of it, looking at whether we would do it internally or go to an external model, which when you see it's Envision, I think St. John is the mechanism. They have a whole separate board looking at economic development. You can see on the 3rd page in that there's a real mix of the RSCs about whether they're doing external or internal. The choice was to keep it internal simply because we thought we would have better control over the costs and how it would look going forward. There was concern that if we went with an external body, we'd be locked into a contract for a period of years. And it was felt that if we try this for a period of time and it's not working internally, we can always look to go out. But it was easier to move that way than it would be to go back the other way. All that being said, when you get to the end of that presentation, you can see the last 2 pages are really the gist of it. It talks about the financial requirements and opportunities. The estimate to deal with the 6 pillars for economic development, they're estimating about $250,000 a year for member contributions. And there is another handout. Thank you. It's a 3-pager. Thank you, Chris. This is really, it has my very messy, squirrely writing on it. The overall costs are on those 2 pages, and you can see them on this as well. But this gives you the breakdown of what each municipality is going to be responsible for each of the pillars. The corporate, that first one is basically the overall administration of the RSC. It's our portion of maintaining the office and having the entity run. Local planning, you'll see we have nothing there because we have our own development officer here. We don't use that service through the RSC. Solid waste, while the tipping fees aren't changing, that's based on what our average tonnage is, so that number could fluctuate, but it's based on that average. There's a note at the bottom of that page just for the next group of them. Economic development and tourism are based solely on the tax base. The rest of them are based 50% of our population, and 50% is calculated on the tax base, so it adjusts the numbers a little bit from what the other ones are. So you can see our numbers for economic development, community development, the regional transportation, public safety, recreation. Our region has already been doing, and we get the bulk of that money back because they base how they distribute the recreation money is based on high school catchment areas. So the total for Graham and Ann, our contribution overall will be $194,000, which is about 2.1, almost 2.2 cents on our tax base. It's an increase of about a penny, 1.73 cents is what the new services are, because that other 0.5 we're already covering through our recreation contribution and our solid waste. The budget this year is not approved by the RSC Board of Directors. It's approved by the province. So we think that this is what's going to be accepted. It seemed to have a good response from the transition coordinator, but we won't know for sure until it is approved by the province. But those are the numbers we're looking at. That was very fast and probably not all that clear. So I'm open for questions. This 3-pager, it's part of a 64-page budget document if anybody wants the full document, but it seemed like a lot of paper to circulate for really what you want is the last 3 pages. So there is funding out there. It was actually identified after the budget was put together. There is some funding out there, we think, for economic development, which may lower some of these numbers. If that happens, their budget process works like ours, so the surplus would come back the second year, and it will be divided based on each of the categories that are there, because everybody's contributing, because it varies between the population and the tax base versus the full tax base amount, so they're gonna keep it divided out. So if there's a surplus in economic development, it will lower the economic development contribution 2 years out. Does that sort of make sense? This has been, I said to somebody coming in, when we were talking about this here a while ago, this has been a very complicated, convoluted process, and I have been involved in complicated, convoluted government processes before, and this one ranks right up there. I think, given it's just been such a quick timeline with very little guidance coming out to do it, and we did put most of this together. The bulk of this came together over the summer, so it's hot off the press, essentially. So I don't know if that helps or confuses, but I'm welcome any questions on it. And if I can't answer, we have Hollis coming for a lunch meeting tomorrow, and he will be able to. So, Councillor Green.
Yeah, just for an example, like sports, recreation, and culture, $56,834. So what are we getting for that? Are we contributing to the Carus Leon Center and stuff, or what actually do we get for that money?
That comes back to us. Like, there's a small part taken off the top for the corporate management, but then that money comes back to us for recreation. They did it so that, because there's such a bulk of Charlotte County that is in local service districts, that money is all going into the Regional Service Commission, and then it's spent. Basically, the St. George Blacks Harbor area gets X amount of dollars towards their recreation programs. St. Stephen gets X amount, just based on the high school catchment areas. Because of where we are, it's a money in, money out essentially thing for us.
So do we know what percentage of that comes back, or what dollar value?
I can confirm that with Alyssa, but I think it's pretty close to the full amount. And that was set up, because we've been doing this, I think, 3 or 4 years now, if I remember correctly.
Yes, yeah, I can look at the numbers for sure, but they invoice us every 3 months for, I'd have to look, I can't say off the top of my head, but they give us money back every month.
But I think I understand where your concern is. It's been my concern right along, is a lot of these services, because of our geographic location, it's very hard for us to be able to benefit from them in the same way that people who are on the mainland necessarily can. It's something that we spent a lot of time talking about, and I expect as each of these programs is developed, I expect that that's what we're going to spend a lot of time on, and I know that's going to be what I spend a lot of my time talking about, is how can Grand Manan receive some benefit from some of these things, because we're just not in a position where a lot of them we are. Dial-A-Ride is one where I think that we do get a benefit back, because I know we have a lot of people that are using that, so maybe there is some back on the transportation piece of it, but I echo your concerns. Anyone else? Councillor Boyd looks like he's got something to say.
Around the table at the Union of Municipalities Board, this is all encompassing currently, with the municipal amalgamations, the weighting of price versus cost and all that stuff through not just only our zone but everybody's zones. Again, it falls with all this too quick pushing from the province to amalgamate all these entities so quickly. So. It is a living, breathing document. I don't think I mean, these numbers are probably in and around close to what it should be, but it was made pretty clear at our last board meeting that there is funding available for the economic development portions of this stuff. So it's not all completely right out of pocket, but again, it's one of these things that they're kind of pushing, and it's not firm. As Mayor Morse said, the budget hasn't been approved. And so a lot of it is, they've been saying all along from the province, from Mr. Allan's office, that you pay to play. So what you need, you pay for. What you don't, you don't. But it's becoming more apparent as the plan is getting closer to implementation that you're going to pay for it all, whether you use it or not. So there's still a lot to be discussed yet, but this is, it's good to get the numbers. It's good to see the weighting between the populations and through the high school catchment areas and everything like that. So it is still, there is flexibility, there is money available, so we haven't got to pay every single thing there, but it's a huge issue everywhere. It's not just here, but I know we're concentrating with here, but it's huge, and it's nothing set in stone yet because everybody's digging their heels in on it. So
Thank you, and I will just say on that, we spent a fair amount of time talking about, like, what if we just put nothing in? Or what if we say we don't want to do economic development? And we were told very clearly by the transition coordinator, you are going to do it. So you can put a number in, or we'll put a number in for you. So, and I think everybody sitting around the table is very conscious. They don't want to have to raise tax rates any more than anybody else, or to pay for something that they're not getting their money back from. So it's just something we're gonna have to feed out through the process, but it is certainly it's a huge change, and it's something we're gonna have to deal with come budget time, so. Councillor Turner?
It just seems odd that we would pay in like 56,000 for recreation, and a bit of that is taken for the corporate, for the admin side, and then it's given back to us to do with as we please. That does not sound like good stewardship of funds to me.
That process has been in place for, I'm gonna say, about 4 years in our region. And I don't disagree with you, but that's how it was set up. I think potentially over the next year, it may be worth going back and having another revisit for, and maybe it's something we can talk to Hollis about a bit more tomorrow while he's here, to understand how it was set up that way in the first place. But that predated me a little bit, so I'm not really sure how the functionality of that was set up.
This is actually the first year we've had to pay that recreation one and gotten it back.
Is it? As I thought it had been set up before.
No, we've had to pay the corporate, like
Yep.
but not the recreation one, and they're not giving it all back. They're giving us $3,700 a month back
So,
out of that 56, but we're still paying 35, 31 a year for.
anyone else? Okay, 14.3, council chambers, cameras, Councillor Russell.
Suggested there's some better camera arrangement we could have for these things. What it would be, there'd be a camera up there and one up there. And each position would be, could be 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And who's ever speaking to control someone being in the, what's it called, room, video room, TV room? Like if filming, you would just hit 4, and if this camera would focus on this. There would be no requirement for cameras out there. Apparently this is very effective. Not very effective. Bill put together some numbers. There's 2 cameras, there's ceiling mounts, cabling, a pole, a switcher, $6,359.50, and Bill has volunteered to help set this up with no charge from him. So we've had continuous problems with technology in this room. I guess it's gone on for quite a while. These are all new microphones. Apparently they're working better when you turn them on. So I'm going to just put that out as, do we want to go there? Because I know I get some feedback from our community that they have problems, logging on and watching these live. We had a little problem last month where we used Esme's video recording to dub over the actual council meeting. Did we get to an acceptable level?
It's almost ready to go.
Okay, it'll be put out when when people, when the staff are happy with it, it'll go out. So, anyway, it just happened to be, the three of us happened to be here at the same time, so I just open it up to the floor if any discussion, or I can make a motion, or it's a non-budgeted item, but I'm sure Alyssa could find $6,359.50. We do have reserves in that too. It depends on how, what kind of quality do we want to put out for the people that like to watch us. And there are some people that like to watch us.
Questions or comments for Councillor Russell? Councillor Boyd?
Are some of our issues like network and internet related? Is it through YouTube, or is there some other functionality that we can go through that will bring things up for substantially less cost than that? Or I'm not opposed to upgrading our cameras and things like that, but I wonder if it's Wi-Fi, if it's YouTube Live, if it's whatever it is.
The last time we had the issue with the council meeting last month, it was sound. And we had just purchased a brand new box. There's a broadcaster, which is out there, and as well as the new switcher. So the broadcaster was recommended by Patrick at CHCO. And he's been there a long time. He used to be coming when they used to have the old Boys and Girls Club building to do the old telethons. So this is what he does, and so he's the expert in the field. So we're kind of taking his recommendations, and we found out it was a defect right from the manufacturer. So it's just stuff that's unavoidable. But we have slowly been upgrading everything. So the mics are all new, the broadcaster is new, the laptop, which runs everything, that the software that puts it on YouTube is brand new. The switcher is new, which the switcher isn't really much good to us right now, because right now it's only switched on 2 cameras. So we have one camera focused on the council table, and then the other camera is focused on the podium. So basically you've got channel 1, channel 2. But internet's been upgraded. We now have the fiber, which we've got speeds now higher than we've ever had. So all the pieces are in place. The last time Patrick was over here, I think was during one of their interviews with the mayor in the bank. He just happened in one of his bags to have a camera, because we found out that the new switcher was HD and our camera wasn't HD. So he just happened to have one. It's the smaller version over there next to Caleb, and he donated that. And even though that's a new to us HD camera, it's still over 20 years old. So he was tasked from different municipalities to help with the same problem with streaming their council meetings. So he actually had it in his bag as well, is one of these brand new surface mount cameras, which it's got the preset positions, like Councillor Russell said, where Bill's out in the control room. If I'm talking on number 7, he just hits the 7. And it completely, even though we love that Caleb's here tonight, it completely eliminates Caleb. So it can all be controlled from the one room. It still doesn't help when we have those Zoom meetings. We still don't have that technology yet. I know the Service Commission as well as St. Stephen use the new owl, which the owl just kind of sits in the middle of the room, and as you speak, it's got a 360-degree camera that switches to you, and it's voice activated. So if it goes to Councillor Boyd, it spins, it goes to Councillor Boyd, but then all of a sudden, if Councillor Green starts talking, it switches over. But again, going with the experts, Patrick didn't recommend that because the video quality is not the best. The sound in the middle of the room wasn't the best. So the best that worked with the investment that we've already made, which is the microphones and stuff, this is kind of what we've gone with. So I guess the last piece of the puzzle would be updated cameras. So.
Anyone else?
Is it worthwhile, now that we have the new something you said, broadcaster or something that Patrick brought for this meeting, to kind of see how that works before we?
Absolutely. And the last time it was completely unplanned. Like, you know how Bill always comes in with his phone and is like, we're on Councillor Layton's They go through the thing. Anyway, he did all that. Everything worked great. But once we started, right before the mayor started her opening comments, nothing. And unless one of us are actually on our phones, like watching the YouTube, like no one knows. So I think it was Bill's wife texted him like, "There's no sound." So anyway, I'm curious to see how this works out, and I think all the glitches are out. So, I mean, it's certainly something that we could wait till budget season to budget for next year. I mean, these cameras are better than we've had so far. I mean, they'll get us through the next 4 months, and then maybe look at upgrading in the new year with the new budget. But it's completely up to the group.
So, what's the wishes of the group? Now, later, not at all.
Well, I've always share your concern with getting our message out there and people participating, right? And it never works out. There's always seems to be an issue over the last year, plus 4 years before I ever come along, because I used to enjoy watching them, but it's just, you couldn't, right? But I think we're slowly getting better at this, and I don't know. I like your idea, and I think we've discussed that before, but there's a confusion of if there's a lot of people talking, then the camera gets confused and things get lost in the shuffle. But I'm up for making this as public event as possible and the easiest way for people to engage, right? They don't have to come here, they can sit home and watch it. But how we get there, I don't know, but I think we're on our way. But
Are you making a motion, or is that just a comment?
that was just a comment.
Councillor Turner?
Yeah, I would be for assessing where we're at first, because we don't know. I mean, I'm not against getting new cameras or whatever, but I don't think it hurts to take a look at least one meeting to see where we're at right now. And then we will be almost in budget season anyway, and we can budget for it if we need to, but I think it makes sense to take a look at one meeting.
Okay. Councillor Russell?
Maybe we could assess this meeting and invite Bill into the next meeting, because Bill really understands this much better than we do, I think. I'm speaking for both of us, but, and he I know Bill thinks this is a good solution, but it could certainly wait a month.
All right, so we will put this to the side. We can all have our homework of looking at the video from this meeting and assess where we think we are. And then we'll talk about it either in October or when we start the budget process and see where we need to go. Is that fair? Okay. 14.5 is the Multicultural Association. This is going to be really quick. Given that we have been fortunate to have a number of newcomers come to the community, we had a meeting with the Multicultural Association. I sat down with them back in the spring, early summer. And we've been trying to work with them. Rachel Leslie has a little bit more to make sure. They have a variety of programs that are available for people who are moving into the country, like whether it's to help to get English lessons, things like that. And given the number of people that we've had arrive here, it seems prudent that we be working with them a little bit more. They like to do an event for some of the people who have moved here that are new to the country. They're looking at doing it September 22nd, I believe is the date. It's a Saturday. I put it out in an email looking for people to volunteer, and I had some very happy people email back and say they'd be interested. I've passed those names on to the Multicultural Association, but I just wanted to put it out there to see if there's any other interest around the table. And if not, Brenda will be contacting the lucky people who said that yes, they would help out.
Did you say September 22nd?
Yeah.
I can't be here for that date.
It's a Saturday. Maybe I've got the wrong date. September 24th. Okay. So you're still on the list as one of the volunteers, and we'll see how this goes. They're looking at a picnic type of event, and I expect that there'll be more of those, and I hope there will be as we go along. And it's something that we've talked about, I think, at Economic Development, and also when we had the meeting with the Safe Harbor group, is ways that we can be more welcoming and have some sort of program, materials maybe put together. So maybe that's something we can talk about as we get going along as well. So that was my blurb on that, and I'll move on to 14.4, food truck fees, CAO Rayner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, as everyone knows, the food trucks that were here during Island Fest was a huge success. And so, with that being said, of course, they would like to come back. What was the date on that, Councillor Turner? September 20th. So, when they were here for Island Fest, the festival paid a substantial contribution to help get these trucks here, because this is the first time any trucks had ever been to Grand Manan. It was a huge risk, not knowing business-wise they were giving up potential business on the mainland, so they took a risk. So the festival paid for a fair bit of their help. So this time they're kind of coming on their own. So they reached out and wanted to know if that was possible. So this came up in a conversation at the last Finance and Properties Committee meeting about the food trucks coming, and it was kind of tossed back and forth about the food trucks. Some of the comments we heard from around the community was that these people just came and set up, and other island businesses pay taxes and all that stuff. So we thought a good opportunity to possibly charge them like a daily fee to set up. We also made a substantial investment into electricity and stuff for these food trucks, so might be a little bit of a way to recoup some of the costs. So at the Finance and Properties Committee meeting, I guess the fee of $100 per day was thrown out there. So I guess with that said, that's just kind of where we left it.
Questions or comments? Councillor Layton.
Where would the food truck set up? Here on our property?
Same location, yes.
And is that not a conflict of it? I understand putting that on for a festival for the community, but for somebody just to come over and do business for themselves, should we be supporting that on our property? I don't like.
Councillor Turner?
We do that, like market vendors and stuff don't have to be from Grand Manan, and
Good point.
and if we're charging them, then
But I've got a lot of feedback from different people in the community that are in the food business, and they weren't so happy about us supporting. But I understand the festival, community participation, and having something great. I have no issue at all with them coming over, but I don't know about them using our property. It's just, I love the food, and it was delicious, and I want them to come back, but I mean, does it put us in a position? I guess it doesn't, because we do the farmers market. So I'll withdraw my comments. I guess I answered myself, maybe.
I think it's a fair comment. I think it is something we have to evaluate. I think in my mind, part of it would come down to the duration of time that they're here. I think there's a difference between coming and setting up for a couple days versus coming and setting up for 2 months for that sort of thing. But that's just my own personal comment, and I'm not supposed to have those. So I'll withdraw my comments. Anyone else have a comment? I see Councillor Boyd and then Councillor Russell.
Perhaps we could have Chris reach out to the CAO in the town of St. Andrews. They have food trucks come for several different events that I believe are set up on town property, and maybe they've got some sort of insight that could how they work around that, because I know they have the farmers markets, and they always have markets on special events and all this stuff, and they have been incorporating food trucks and all those as well on town property. So maybe that'd be a good place to start.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd. Councillor Russell?
Yes, we just picked 100 out of the air. We really had but with the idea that, if one came, we'd evaluate it. Maybe it should be 200. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't think 200 would make much of a dent into their revenue from what I hear. So, and it is revenue. They're not coming here this time on the village ticket. So whether 100's right or wrong, I think after they've been here once, we'd have a better idea.
Councillor Toll?
I was just wondering if instead of the fee, it could be a percentage of their sales, even if it's only 1% or if it's and that's the fee they pay to come down here and cook food.
Counselor Layton, I see you over there.
Well,
again.
I'd worry about like confidentiality, and I wouldn't want to share my sales with anybody.
Some concern about the ramifications of being set up on village property, and a suggestion to reach out to the town of St. Andrews to see how they deal with it, just as far as policy, use of public lands, that sort of thing. There's concern about doing it outside of the festival and the impact on other local businesses versus, I think, some of the excitement maybe that people had around that. And, you know, some of the precedent maybe is the right word around having people from off island or people here set up selling at market. I sort of summarized everything, and so now the question is, where do we go from here?
I think the length of the stay is something that we, should think about too, like you were saying.
Councillor Russell?
I think they're coming September the 20th, aren't they? So we've got to do something tonight. Either we allow them, either they're coming or they're not. If they're coming, we should charge them something. So I think the timeline is going to drive this one.
Councillor Turner?
One small concern I have is that the Bangkok food truck uses a lot more power than Serious Smoke, like a lot more. So should we have it, I mean, is it fair to set the same charge, if it's actually a charge for what they're using? Is it fair to have the same charge for both?
Would it be worth suggesting a one-off fee? How long are they here for in September? 2 days? 1 day? 3?
Bangkok would be here Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I think. I think the same as
Before.
for the festival, 3 and 3.
I'm just wondering if we had like a one-off fee for this year, and I can't come up with the right wording for that because it's 9 o'clock at night and I'm getting punch drunk. And then reassess where we are based on maybe what the town of St. Andrews does and have a more permanent fee structure for another year and a more set policy. Councillor Russell?
That's exactly what we talked about at F&P, was pick a number. We picked a number, evaluate it. We can evaluate, check other communities, but, either that or tell them to stay home. I suggest we invite them for $100 a day.
Councillor Green?
Yeah, I think we could probably even take a look at our power bill for that month and see what a bump it was, because we should have pretty much the same usage every month. And if we get a number as to how much it increased while they were here, do some quick math and make sure that we're, covering our bases on that.
What's the will of the group?
Is it time for a motion?
Sure.
I'll make a motion that for this year, or for this first time, because there could be a second time this year, but for this time, we charge the food trucks $100 a day, subject to an evaluation after, to see if we can get a better idea of what future rates may be.
You heard the motion from Councillor Russell. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Layton. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. Okay, 14.5, haunted house location, Councillor Boyd.
This is a two-parter. As most of you know, I'm sure all of you know, there's pre-COVID, our group, the Community Events Committee, put on a couple pretty successful haunted houses up at the Business Center. I know my kids attended, had a great time. There's been some conversations around that now. I had a short conversation with our clerk, Ms. Frost, about their plans for this year. And it was kind of, the committee has kind of decided that with the amount of permanent full-time tenants at the business center, it might not be the best location this year. And I asked her if she'd given any thought of maybe our newest building on the block, the Scotia Bank. It's centrally located. It's got great parking. We don't have a current plan for it yet. I discussed this with the CAO as well, and we don't yet have the keys. So this would obviously all be based around when we take over ownership of this building. But I can't think of a better location, at least for this year, until we come up with a full-time gig for that building, to warm it up by having a great haunted house Halloween celebration there. So I guess we don't really need a motion for that. I just wanted to kind of discuss that with the group, see what everybody was thinking, and leave the first part at that if anybody has any comments or questions or concerns on that.
Councillor Green?
Didn't they do that down at the Anchorage in the big house there for a while, and that was a fairly spooky environment as well?
They did it out in the field, and it was the scariest thing I've ever been part of, but that was just my own personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, like I say, I'm not part.
Before, we had it at the business center, and they weren't, it wasn't available.
Because we thought it would be creepy down there too.
Yeah. And then to use the outdoors, but.
What, do you reached out to them this year about it? Well, I would try and see with the Canada Day thing, and it might be an option. It'd be a great spot. I'd try. I like your Scotiabank idea as well. Yep.
And I, like I say, it's kind of an open thing. Again, Esme and I were just kind of tossing this around, and I just wanted to bring it to the attention of the group. And I'm sure, I can't speak for the Community Events Committee, but I'm sure they would be happy with any great location that we could offer up as well. But the second part of this is that they're looking for a little bit of money to help this get off the ground. I'll just read this. I was handed the application for donation as I walked in the door tonight. So they're requesting $200, date required by October 1st, 2022. Their total funds required are $1,500, and they've raised $250 to date. The description of the project or purpose is the Grand Manan Community Events Committee is putting on the first haunted house post-COVID and looking for funds to acquire decor and treats for the kids. Description of measures taken or to be taken to raise additional funds required. They will be holding raffle tickets, organizing gift baskets of local goods, and hosting a bake sale and a 50-50 draw. And this was dropped off by Ashley Harris, who is a member of the Community Events Committee. So I will make a motion that we donate the $200 that they've asked for to the committee for the haunted house.
Heard the motion by Councillor Boyd. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Greenlaw. Question? All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. So we're all good with the haunted house? Committee reports 15-1, Recreation Director's report. Chris.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I love it when most of my report gets read prior to my actual report, so this will be quick. A lot of time was spent on the pool, but just wanted to give everyone a quick rundown of some of the stuff that took place. As you all know, summer season ended on Victoria weekend, and Labor Day weekend. VIC closed, another great summer with them, as well as our summer rec student. They had a busy summer with the ball fields. So Castalia Ball Field, they wrapped up last week. Their house league finished right before school started. They had a U9 kind of travel team that doesn't have an actual league or provincial. They just kind of went away at the end of the year for a tournament. to end that season. Softball, I guess that's one of our biggest users. They're wrapping up probably this week. They're in their finals. It's the best of 5. I think game 1 was actually tonight. So depending on how that goes, it should be wrapped up this week. The Seal Cove ball field, every year, same time, we get the same requests from the school for high school baseball. And every year, it's always a struggle to know what to do, because when you have a field that doesn't get touched for, basically 50 other weeks a year, other than the 2 weeks they use it, it really goes downhill, and it's hard for us to justify going down there on a regular basis, putting money into it if it's not getting used. But it also makes it hard when it comes time for them to want to use it. And anyway, so that time came. I had a good conversation with the coach of the team this year about what to do. I was prepared to make a little bit of investment in that field. There was some money left over in the rec budget for ball fields. But kind of last minute, they changed their format for the high school baseball. Prior to this year, it used to be an 8-game season where 4 games were away, 4 games were home. That changed. Now it's a 5-game season. 2 of those he thought would be home, but they weren't guaranteed. Then they go into a tournaments type of play in order for their seeding. So they really couldn't ask us to put that kind of investment in the field that they really didn't know if they were going to be able to use or not. So anyway, in the meantime, we had a very generous gentleman that spent a lot of time down there over the last few weeks. He felt bad that the kids weren't able to use it. So a big thanks to Ron Benson for all the time that he put into that field. He does actually have it looking in pretty good shape. They're still not playing any games, but we moved some bases down actually today, and they're going to have practices down there starting tomorrow. They had been practicing in Grand Harbor up to this point. So anyway, big thanks to Ron. It was a lot of work. So shortly after the last meeting, I contacted Charlotte County Refrigeration. They come over and done their annual fall startup procedure on the machine. Everything was checked over, gone over twice. And once the meter was read by MB Power, we flicked the switch on. So currently out there right now, it's somewhere around -4 to -5. We usually try to maintain that temperature for about roughly 10 days to get everything in the building chilled down, the floor being the big thing, but there's a lot of metal and wood in there that it takes some time. Unfortunately, the temperatures that we've been having lately are fantastic, but it's absolutely horrible for trying to make ice. So we were scheduled to start making ice today, but with the forecasted temperatures, there's no good for us to even try until we get a little bit more seasonal temperatures. This past weekend, Caleb and his group of volunteers held a fantastic Saturday event of the Touch-A-Truck. I know there was a lot of kids here, a lot of people. I think Alyssa and Esme and even Tom was here, Esme's husband, making cotton candy and popcorn. And I think at one point the fire department had the fire trucks going. They were spraying the water across the parking lot, and the kids were running. They just had a fantastic day. So big thanks to Caleb and those volunteers. The last thing would be the fall gym schedule is out, so anyone looking to book an hour of time for a community event, whether it's basketball, volleyball, badminton, all those indoor things that the adults are looking forward to contact Caleb at the rec office to book those times. So other than that, I'm open for any questions.
Councillor Russell?
Just an update on the high school ball season. They played a doubleheader yesterday in Sussex and Hampton. They're in St. Stephen Wednesday, and they finish their season next Sunday in St. John and St. George. A 1-week season. And then playoffs after, but
anyone else? Thanks, Chris. 15.2, Transportation Committee Report. Councillor Layton.
associated with working on a live runway. We hold weekly project meetings. We missed last week because of vacations, but we're having one tomorrow. I can probably bring people up to a little more data on where we are after that meeting. Basically, we push the button on the machine, and the airport will take care of itself. Basically, the contractor we picked that. So I guess our biggest challenge right now is our service and who provides that service to the island. Land Charters is our preferred method of air ambulance service for the past, I don't know, 15 years, whatever. I think it's very important that we keep this service based on Grand Manan. Our local pilots are very familiar with the runway, the crosswinds. The pilots working for ambulance in Brushwood, they're not so comfortable with landing here. Even when we got a brand new runway, they're not going to be as comfortable as the big 5,000-foot runways on the mainland. So, in saying all that, I'd like to make a motion that we write a letter of support to Premier Higgs for Atlantic Charters to continue the medevac services out of Grand Manan.
Heard the motion from Councillor Layton. Do we have a seconder?
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Brown. Questions?
Is that, for grabs, like, is that contract?
I think when the Transportation Committee met out at the airport, there was discussion about changes to the Transport Canada regulations that are coming in December. And I think that there is a challenge with the contract, and they're in discussions right now with the province about how they're going to fit into it with the new regulations. So they were looking for a letter of support to be the preferred provider of that service, given the changing climate in aviation right now. Any other questions? All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. Anything else, Councillor Layton?
I guess not really. We have some road. Discuss that in closed session.
Any other questions for Councillor Layton? Okay, hearing none. Moving on to 17-1. Oh, sorry, Councillor Green, I forgot. So from the general, so we're looking for approval to pay the following invoices from the general operating fund. From Island Home Hardware, the August statement of $1,921.28. Elle's Funeral Home maintenance at the North Head Cemetery for $2,817.50. Film and Green for Island Fest banners, $1,713.50. Film and Green for Island Fest banners for $2,185. Waterfront Fabricating for banner brackets, $2,932.50. And Island Waste and Recycling for backhoe repairs for $3,423.48.
I'd make a motion that we pay these out of the general operating fund.
Heard the motion from Deputy Mayor Fitzsimmons. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Greenlaw. Question?
These ones from the Allen Fest banners and stuff, that money in, money out type of deal? No? We're paying that?
We're paying,
Tourism?
no, we're paying for that with Joanne's grant that she received.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
So it is coming from.
Kind of, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
And they're this year's, and probably them for next year already
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. We could have the haunted house here.
It's pretty spooky here.
18.1 is a motion to transfer funds. So we're looking for a motion to transfer $2,554.95 from the North Head Cemetery Trust to the general operating fund. You heard the motion from Councillor Greenlaw. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Boyd. Question? All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. So the next thing on the agenda is closed session. We have 5 things: financial, the village finances, banking, brush cutting tender. We have a property issue at the C&D site and personnel for the CAO. Do I have a motion to go to closed session?
Make a motion to go into closed session.
Heard the motion from Deputy Mayor Fitzsimmons.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Toll. Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. I'll recall this regular council meeting in the Village of Graham Nahan to order. We were in closed session for 5 items. The financial, the village finances, there's no motion required on that. The financial for banking, there's not a motion there, or the brush cutting tender. The property for the C&D site, that was an update as well. And so 19.5 was personnel, CAO, Councillor Green.
I move that as Chris Rayner has successfully completed his probationary period, that we offer him the compensation package recommended by the Personnel Committee.
You heard the motion by Councillor Green. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Brown. Question? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried. Next regular council meeting will be October 3rd, 7:30 here at the Community Center, and
I move to adjourn.
thank you very much. Good night, everybody.